The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Joe Martek, that's me. We're on the radio live. Hey, just so you know, I've got a guest star with me here today, a young lady named Kaylee Brown, who just moved from California, and she's not a liberal. Is that true?
Yep, that's true.
And when you talk, I put you on the radio, you got to lean forward just a little bit into the microphone. I'm going to make you a professional radio personality. By the end of today, you'll say, this is all there is to it. I mean,
not much to it,
there
is there?
isn't much to it.
No.
2004, give or take, Joe Martek, financial advisor, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, decided to start doing radio shows. And the concept was very simple. I've got a ton of clients in Florida and in 13 other states, and clients would call me and ask me questions about car insurance, house insurance, legal items, and obviously I can't know all that stuff. So in my not too humble opinion, if you are a credible professional, you align yourself with other credible professionals in order to help your client. So Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, big word, independent. Now, why is that a big word? Funny I should bring that up. If you work for one insurance company, and there's a lot of captive insurance companies. I used to be an agent for Farmers, which is a very good company. But when a client walked in the door or a prospect, if Farmers didn't do it, I was out of luck. And so were they. I had to send them someplace else or they'd leave me anyway. And when Hurricane Andrew hit back in 1992, it put about 13 insurance companies out of business because it devastated Dade County.
Oh, that's right. Welcome to Florida.
Oh, thank you.
June 1st is hurricane season starts.
Well, the good news is with hurricanes we have advance notice. In California,
that's true.
The advance notice you have with an earthquake was when the windows start to move.
the hanging plants swing a little. Yeah.
I mean, I remember sitting in Sausalito, in a magnificent place on a cliff restaurant, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but boy, was it gorgeous. In Sausalito, you been there?
Nope.
Oh, boy. I mean, if you have a shack, it's $1.5 million or $2 million, and and then if you get a nice house, it's $3 to $4 million, and if you get a decent house, it's $5 million. I mean, it's kind
of like the Keys nowadays.
Well, much more expensive than the Keys. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I'm watching the windows move, and there's not a truck going by, and there's not a train going by. The windows are moving. And all of a sudden, my water in my glass is moving. And I'm looking around, and nobody cares. I mean, nobody. Only one that cared was me.
Yeah.
And my wife at the time, she didn't notice it. And if I'd have told her, we'd have had a screaming Mimi running out, trying to jump out of the cliff. But because it was a normal little tiny thing, nobody paid any attention. Now, when the walls are coming down, I think you start paying attention. But
I guess you learn at what point you should go outside.
Yes, they teach you from pretty much pre-K going forward. There's earthquake drills.
But it's almost a daily occurrence in some places.
Yep.
It happens so often that they get jaded. But when the stuff starts falling off the shelves and and the house starts cracking, that's kind of a clue that it's serious. So anyway, Florida, like I was in the Bahamas some years ago, and there's a hurricane coming, and I'm on a mooring in a town called Hopetown, and they come and knocked on my boat and said, you have to leave. And I said, why? And they said, there's a hurricane coming. I said, yeah, but this is a great safe spot. And they go, nope, you'll break loose from that mooring and you'll be a bowling ball and you will take out whatever in your way. So you have...
No, we would like for you to leave.
Yeah.
In other words.
I got evicted.
We don't want your boat in our yard tomorrow morning.
We don't want your boat in our yard, yeah. Sitting on top of our restaurant.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was Francis.
Okay. Oh, and Francis sat over the Bahamas for a long time.
Big time. So I got very lucky. I got to leave, come back, tie my boat up, everything, and survive Francis, which was wonderful. Anyway, but back in '92, which was Hurricane Andrew, which was a very devastating big earthquake, when it put all these insurance companies out of business, it changed the complexion in Florida quite often, because many of the captive companies, the companies would come to their policyholders and say, okay, we're letting you go. We're going to let go half of our business, and I don't care if you've been with us 20 or 30 years, we're letting you go. Or if they didn't let you go, they doubled or tripled the cost to insure you. But an independent insurance agent doesn't work for one company.
Well, let me give you an example. My homeowner's insurance on my brand new house in Port St. Lucie before Hurricane Andrew was $291, I think it was, something like that. And then after that same neighborhood is paying about $3,000 net today.
Yep.
I mean, it just from $300 to $3,000.
And that was not abnormal. So what happened is, would that upset you a little bit when your insurance cost went from $300 to $3,000?
Yeah, 10
just
times.
a little bit.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
it affects your mortgage payment. Now your house costs you more if you're escrowing that insurance.
So what happens is, literally, the independent insurance agent doesn't work for one company. Dan has about 100.
The other thing I like about the independent thing is I know as a customer he's working for me, not the company.
And literally, that's what it amounts to. So, just as an example, my little red Mustang, it really didn't like me for a while, so it had a few tickets. It wasn't my fault. I forgot to use cruise control.
Bad car.
Bad car. So my insurance cost was up big. So this last renewal, my insurance cost was about $350 a month. That's expensive.
Do you remember that from when you were like 17?
No, I don't. I can't remember back that far. But literally, Dan's office lowered it by $200 a month.
He has to be good. He's on the "you better be good" plan now.
And I've been warned. You better be good plan is right.
Better be good.
They said, please, Joe, please, don't get any more tickets, please. It's not that easy, getting you a good rate because, you're a crummy driver. Anyway, but I'm not. But it is. I am paying more attention. You know how sometimes you get away with running stop signs and you get away with, you don't remember those?
I don't do this.
You don't roll through a stop sign?
No.
You stop full?
Yes. I follow all the rules.
I know you better than that. This is not possible. But anyway, the independent, what Dan's office will do on renewal time, if premiums go up, they will shop because he's got, and I think an automobile insurance company, he's got 45 or 50 companies just in that alone. So he can plug you into the computer and shop for you. And that's why he is the premier independent insurance agent on the Treasure Coast. And I mean, he's only been in business 37 years. I mean, it's just a little bit. Then Greg Fasula, attorney, one of the first things that happens when I meet a new suspect or prospect, I ask them if they're ready to die. Can you imagine me asking somebody that?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. And when Greg Fasula was sitting here, attorney, he would say, Joe, you're not supposed to say it that way. You're supposed to say, have you done your estate planning?
A little different.
A little bit different
means
approach.
The same thing.
Means the same
you
thing.
just kind of get to the point, right?
Well,
you're ready to die.
The key is with estate, people say, I don't have an estate. I got a single wide trailer and a 47 truck, I said, that is your estate. Whatever you own is your estate. Well, all I've got is a jacket and a pair of jeans. That's your estate.
Yeah, who are you leaving it to?
Yeah, who you, right, Goodwill. Okay, fine, write it down. That's who gets it. Point is this. So very often when I meet people, my job, as I see it, is to stir the pot a little bit. Let's get a will or a trust set up, power of attorney. Like just last week, I went to see a client, and mother and daughter, mom's a widow, daughter's moved in with her, which is a good thing, and mom says, okay, I want to add my daughter to my house because one day I'm going to die and I want her to have the house. And I said, well, maybe not. Here's what happens. In the state of Florida, if I own a house, let's say I paid $50,000 for it, and when I die, it's worth $100,000. I can leave it to my daughter, and there's no tax. It's now worth $100,000, and that's the new value. There is no tax between the $50,000 and the $100,000. But if I put her on the deed today, and then I die, and then she wants to go sell it for $100,000, it goes back to the basis of 50, and she'd owe tax on 50,000. So I said, I don't really think we want to do that. Number one. And number two, we also have a potential for a homestead problem. In Florida, if you have a home that's your homestead, that's where your primary residence, and you declare it as your homestead, you get sued by anybody for anything. They cannot take your house away from you. But if it's not your homestead, they can. So I said, when you add somebody to your house, and if that person doesn't live there, it kind of voids the homestead. So you have to live and make it your primary residence. I said, what we do is you set up a trust. A trust is an inanimate object. You move your assets into this trust. And in the trust, it says, the day I die, it's my daughter's house. No tax. So around the middle of, I think maybe, anyway, next month, this month, I forget, I got it written down. Remember, I got to write stuff down, put it on the calendar. We're going to go see Greg Fasula, and he'll do a trust and get mom's house put into the trust for the daughter, and the mom's protected, daughter's protected. And all.
Now, at that point, should she be looking at other things she might own, or even bank accounts?
Here, see this, because Dan's not here to help set me up, she knows what I'm talking about. The answer is yes and no. You have a checking account, Kaylee?
Yep.
Okay. When you open that checking account, did they do a document called a TOD agreement, transfer on death?
Possibly. I opened it when I was in high school.
Okay.
So.
You don't have a new bank account here in Florida yet?
Nope.
Okay. When you do, you make sure they do a TOD. So let's say you open this bank account in just your name without your boyfriend. But you figure, if I drop dead today, I want my boyfriend to get it. So you don't want to put him on the account because you don't trust him totally. But you put him on as a transfer on death, so if you drop dead today, he would automatically get the bank account. It wouldn't have to go through the court system.
Okay.
Or you could put your brother or your
mother.
Well,
then and even in that type of situation, there would be no doubt. I mean, if something were to happen to you and you wanted him to have the money, he wouldn't be able to get it.
Unless there was a TOD
Exactly.
agreement. Because he's not a blood relative, which means he definitely couldn't have it. Mm-hmm. It would go to your brother or your parents and let them fight over the $7.50 that's in the account. But key is this. So very often when I counsel people, the transfer on death agreement we can use on brokerage accounts. We can use on bank accounts. We can't use it on rental real estate.
Now, shouldn't you like LLC a rental property or something anyway? Shouldn't that be taken care of on its own?
Well, if you set up a corporation or a limited liability corporation, you still have to have some kind of transition when you die.
Okay.
So if you don't have it in a trust, it's subject to probate.
Now, would that have to have its own trust?
Well, not necessarily. You have what's called a living trust, means as long as I'm alive, I can put stuff in and take stuff out. So you could have six pieces of property, one piece of property, two. You can have whatever, your bank accounts. You can put anything you want in a trust. Some things you don't need to put in a trust, or it doesn't even make any sense to put in a trust. But when it comes to protecting real estate, it gets pretty high up on the list.
Now, if you put that rental property in your trust, does that tie that asset to other assets?
Not necessarily. Let's say that I've got three pieces
You're talking just like Greg.
Yeah, well, that's how attorneys talk. Yeah. Well,
Maybe.
Let's say I've got 3 pieces of rental property and I've got 3 kids. And I say, okay, fine. When I die, I want them to sell all 3 pieces and divide the money equally.
Okay.
Or I say, okay, fine. This kid gets this piece, this kid gets that piece, this kid gets that piece.
Okay.
I can put that in the trust. The trust basically has all the powers of a person as long as it's written down. And whoever's in charge of the trust after I die, which is called successor trustee, has to do what it says in the trust.
Now, what happens if at that, say it's a rental property, you have tenants and something happens,
right,
and you're sued?
Right.
Is it just that one property, or if it's in a trust, can they attach to other things, or can they attach to nothing at all?
Here's what happens: you can sue a people for anything you want.
Okay.
I mean, sue America is the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will do a limited liability corporation, limited liability partnership, LLC, try to protect in cases of lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
Very often those get penetrated because sometimes people set these things up with the exact purpose of avoiding lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the intent is there and that's the only one asset, it's a bit of a gray area. any kind of protection you can put into these things to protect is better than none. So lawsuits are one thing. A homestead is exempt from lawsuits, so we don't have to worry about it. But if you had multiple rental properties, you now have insurance, liability insurance, that's going to cover you for lawsuits because your tenant can sue you. Somebody can fall down visiting the tenant. Not only will the tenant get sued, you'll get sued because you're the owner. This is Sue America. Anybody we can find, we will sue.
I love it when robbers get in and get hurt and then sue the owner of the house.
Yeah, right, because they didn't maintain their property well.
I got hurt on your property, but you weren't invited.
But you never know. You know, you got to. It's not a pretty picture, but that's called life. Yeah. Anyway, so Greg Fasula became a critical member, and you know we've all learned, meaning all these years and years and years. The reason I know stuff like this is because it happens constantly where I'm talking to clients. But I don't do trusts. I don't do wills. Greg would also do a power of attorney, which when I'm talking to this client of mine, I said your daughter needs to have power of attorney. What happens if you have a stroke and you're out to lunch? And she's not on your bank account, and she's got to pay the electric bill. It's got, somebody's got to be in charge. You also have a health care surrogate. Health care surrogate means, what if I'm in this car accident and I'm in the hospital and I'm on life support, and the doctor wants to operate on me? Doctors don't like operating on you without your authority, so they want somebody else to have authority. And if you have that health care surrogate, you can say, okay, fine, cut her open, go ahead. And there's also what's called a living will, which is part of this whole package normally when the attorney does it. The living will says, hey, like Dan says, in his living will, he wants to be plugged in for about 2 weeks.
Make every effort to save me.
Make every effort.
If there is no hope, then move on.
Then pull the plug and let it go.
I like his philosophy myself.
Yeah, some people say, you pull the plug immediately. I don't care. But it's really what you want. So all of these documents, when they're done professionally and correctly, are there to protect you, your estate, and your family. So Greg became a critical part, and one of the things that happens with Greg's... Kaylee, do you know any attorneys personally?
Nope.
You're lucky. When you meet Greg, this is the only attorney you'll meet in your entire life that you'd like to have as a next-door neighbor, because he's a nice guy, which is against the rules. He's patient. He's understanding. He's not pretentious. He's not arrogant. I said to Greg, did they teach you that in law school? He goes, no. I said, I didn't think so, because you're the only guy I know.
And his mother gets credit for that.
His mother gets credit. He's just a flat good guy, even if he is a liberal. But we love him because
we'll let him slide.
We'll let him slide, but he does a great job, and he takes care of his clients, and he's not expensive. He hates it when I say that. Attorneys get paid by the hour, basically, for what they do. But Greg's fair, very fair, very fair, and just a really good guy. 340-1590, 340-1590. This is a talk show, meaning you can call in and talk, and you can ask questions. And we've got Cliff sitting in the corner. Veronica, he's controlling the TV screen.
Yes, the YouTube record, which will be posted soon.
Tomorrow. Is that?
Well, it's just a reminder to the listeners that they can always re-listen to the show if they missed any portion of it on YouTube.
Now, on YouTube. So what happens? Do you go on site, wrong station,
He-
WPSL.com?
Cliff, he's asking me internet questions.
WPSLTV.com. That takes you to YouTube. And then you say what? I want to see Joe Martek.
You scroll around, I guess.
You scroll around till you
look
find
around
me.
for it.
Now, do you have every show on?
No, just the ones we do live.
Well, okay. Well,
Yeah, every show.
every show.
Yeah.
So you do every show live. Now, do they all archived? I mean, last week, week before?
Yours are, yeah.
Mine are? Okay. So literally, anybody can, they
Joe,
can
you
watch.
should check your show out on YouTube.
Yeah. You sure I want to see me?
Send it to Facebook to all your friends.
Okay. Sounds
Well,
good.
you know what? Yeah, you know what? Look, see, I'm here. You like this. Compliance people are supposed to listen to every show. I'm not allowed to do this stuff, but you could do it on your Facebook site because it ain't mine. I'm not doing it on. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not. They made me resign from LinkedIn, which I didn't even put myself on. I had a relative put me on, because broker-dealers do not like us having these social media sites for fear of guilt by association. You get sued.
So you can't even just say your name, what you do, and your contact information, and that's it on LinkedIn?
No.
No.
Because LinkedIn's a chat site. People can
But
communicate.
if you don't chat, you just have it's like a business card type thing.
Well, but
No chatting.
here's the thing. You like if you Google Joe Martek, Google has my office building, my name, address, phone
Okay.
number, and then it shows all of the different articles written in a newspaper, and it shows some YouTube shows. I think before this one. Anyway, different stuff. But none of these things do I pay for. These are all. I didn't ask for any of these things. The newspaper magically prints these articles. Forget the magic. Anyway.
Okay. So it's paid advertising that you have to watch out for.
Paid advertising is here's what happens. Any kind of advertising I do, like the disclaimer at the beginning of the show, and then at the end of the show we'll have the same disclaimer.
Right.
If I ran an ad in the newspaper, I have to send it into compliance. Compliance has to approve it, and then they put a disclaimer on the bottom, just like was here. Sometimes the disclaimer takes up more space than the ad. So I just don't.
Yeah, why bother?
I just don't do it.
Yeah.
But the radio stations, I'm allowed to say certain things and not allowed to say other things, and that's just called life.
And other things you just qualify with, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Be careful how you phrase it, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe. Could be.
Could be. See, that's attorney talk, right? There's no definitive answers from an attorney. But it's called, everything is gray.
Right.
Is it daylight? Probably. 340-1590, 340. Even Bulldog needs to call in. I mean,
he might be busy packing.
That's about right. That's right. What happened is a faithful listener to the show sold a house, bought a house, and
then changed their mind, and now they're moving.
Now they're moving up because of kids and grandkids. Grandma has to be closer because just the way it is, and he can't cook, so he's got to go with them. So he sold his house again. Now they're buying another house. And then, anyway, that's just the way life works.
Apparently, they're just addicted to moving.
He didn't move for like 12 or 15 years. But Mary Beth, I mean, she owns his rear end, but he's lucky to have her because, he's not a gem.
I can't imagine packing my stuff up twice. I just have to leave all the stuff and get new stuff.
Yeah, right. 340-1590, 340-1590. So, initial three people: Dan Warren, independent insurance agent; Greg Fasula, attorney; Joe Martek, financial advisor. Then, over a period of time, we had a major recession hit. Just a few years ago, that they called the Great Recession, which nearly became another depression. If it wasn't for the government, so they say. And then all of a sudden the real estate market went crazy. So we added Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, who I've known since 1980, who's been in real estate since even before that, and she's only 30 years old. It's just amazing how she can maintain that. The girl knows every street in Martin and St. Lucie County. She's ranked.
She's a good multitasker.
She's an unbelievable.
That's how she's got all that done since 1980.
She only has two speeds: full blast or stop. She's either sleeping or working. That girl, I mean, and that's if she says she's going to call you at 3 in the morning, she's going to call you at 3 in the morning. In fact, the next member of the team, Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, works very close with Victoria. Very often, and we suggest strongly that before you even go look at a house, you talk to Mike for mortgages and find out what you can qualify for, rather than getting turned down. Guess what happened? We just had the owner's husband come in and hand me a note. He thinks he has a sense of humor. He's from California too.
Oh, okay.
People from California have very, 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 very sad senses of humor. So his note is, Dan Warren has towed your red Mustang. You now have a 1968 blue Volkswagen Bug. I'm so happy.
It might be worth something, though.
That Bug might be worth more than my
yeah.
Mustang. You'll take it? Yeah. It probably is yours, Cliff, that Bug, the Volkswagen.
You got a motorcycle on the front, it's mine.
It's it, right. Wait till you see his motorcycle. You won't believe his, Cliff's. But anyway, 340-1590, 340-1590. Ms. Victoria Lloyd is ranked as one of the top 100 RE/MAX agents in the entire world. She is hot stuff.
In the entire world.
In the entire world. Now, when she first told me this,
right here on the little old Treasure Coast.
It was interesting. She came in and she goes, "Look at Joe. I got this letter. It says I'm one of the top 100 agents out of 100,000 in Florida." And I says, "Vic, no, it's not. There's not 100,000 REMAX. You sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." She's not good at math. Yeah. I said, "That's the entire world." She goes, "You're kidding." Yeah. Now that's the way she is. She doesn't have an arrogant bone in her body. She's a worker. She's just a worker. Mike Paulus, mortgage broker. Now, the average person, especially a young person who's never bought a house, they say, "Hey, we want to go buy a house. What do we do?" Well, one of the things they might do is talk to a realtor, or what they might do is walk into their local bank and talk to a bank and say, "Hey, we want to get a mortgage." And what banks do, they'll take an application, and they may even take a deposit, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, they'll come back and say, "No," or "maybe," or "yes." Mike will tell you in 15 minutes on the phone, and doesn't cost you anything. The whole thing that he does immediately is run a credit report on you with your authority. And once that credit report comes back, it tells him what you can qualify for, because you're going to tell him what your income is, how much your combined income, how long you've been on the job. And then he just does it backwards and says, "Hey, this is what you qualify for." So now when you go to a realtor like Ms. Victoria Lloyd, you say, "Hey, Mike says this is what I qualify for, so let's only look at that. Let's don't look at the $1 million houses that I really want, because I can only afford the single wide trailer." So anyway, that's the whole concept of what the group.
And then I would talk to Dan if I picked out a house and find out what's it going to cost me to insure this house, because you might have to change your mind.
And here's what's happening. And Mike, if he was sitting here, would bring this up. When you qualify for a mortgage, it's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance that have to be paid, and that becomes a ratio to your income. If that ratio of your income to debt is too high, you can't get that. You get turned down. Well, very often people will say to the owner of the house, "What are you paying for insurance?" And the insurance cost is X. But when they go to get their own insurance, it becomes Y, which is a whole different figure. Dan, if Mike was sitting here, Dan has probably saved 50 to 100 deals for Mike and Victoria, because these people wouldn't have qualified for a mortgage because of the cost of the insurance. Like you were saying, your homeowner's insurance has gone off the wall. Now, she lives near Archie's, which just because she's
but that dramatic change from the $300 was a house out west.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So now you're back low rent district?
My house is like a whole nother story. Okay. Dan is my agent, and we have gutted out my policy tremendously in order to insure the house, because location is everything.
Yeah. So you got what you want.
I've got what I can afford.
That too. Well, want and need and afford,
right.
They kind of flow
together. The house
together.
is covered.
Yeah, the house is covered. Okay, so that was the object of the group, was here either to make you money, that's my job, or to save you money. And our job on the radio show is to educate people. And you see this producer sitting over here? You think she just because she's a pretty face that she doesn't know anything? She knows almost everything about what we do, because
I'm in class every Wednesday.
Yeah, right. She's been listening forever. So she really knows what's going on. 340-1590, 340-1590. Now, sometimes we get a half a dozen phone calls. Sometimes we get one. Sometimes we get none.
And then sometimes you get calls after the show.
So what happens is there's some people that don't want to talk to me on the radio because they know me. And they think I might pick on him. Yeah. Like if Bulldog was to call in, I'd definitely pick on him. That's not his real name, but that's his nickname. And we know each other. And in fact, I even like him because he went out and bought a good bottle of scotch, some Macallan single malt. And he shared it with me. So, I mean, I forgive him most of the things that are goofy about him just because he has good scotch. Anyway. So the concept here is, if you don't want to talk to us on the radio and you got a question, anything we can help you with, you call the radio station, 340-1590, anytime. They'll give you our individual names and numbers, or they'll take your name and number and have us call you. One of the things I hate to do is to give out all these different phone numbers. You're driving down the road. I don't want to hear a wreck. So remember the radio station phone number, 340-1590. And that will get you through to what you need to know. Okay. Now, did I ever tell you? Did I ever tell you how when I was 12 years old and my brother saved my life?
I think I know the story.
Yeah. But you didn't.
You had a smart brother.
Yeah, you didn't hear this story, did you,
Nope,
Kaylee?
not yet.
So, I'm 12 years old.
You can dust off all the stories now. She's new.
Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff. And there might be somebody out there that hasn't heard this
That's
story.
true.
So, I'm 12 years old. I'm living in Detroit. My dad was a Second World War veteran. He was a captain in the Army. He really never should have left the service. But anyway, he ran a military house. Now, I don't know how your grandfather was, but a lot of the Second World War, these people, they were, tough, black and white. There wasn't much gray. So, do we have a phone
We
call?
do. You'll need your headphones.
I'll need my headphones on. I don't know who this guy is. I bet you his real name is Robert. But
Now you're giving away secrets again.
I know, because he hides behind that. But, Bulldog, it's Joe. You're on the radio.
Hey, Joe, I wear the pants in his family as long as she's not home.
How come I understand that?
Yeah, I know. It's the man song, dude.
Yeah, I'm telling you what. I'm in charge of everything as long as she's not home, right? And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, dear.
And I'll watch TV anytime I want to get in trouble.
So, are you moving?
Yep.
What's the official date?
Movers will be here 13th, 14th next month.
Well, it's June, so that's a good while. It gives you some time to get organized.
Yeah, and it's going to take all of that pretty much, because of VA, loans, and Mike Paulus is working his fingers to the bone and everything. So
yeah, it'll happen. You and I both know that, but that's just life. That's just the way life works. It's against the rules to do things quickly when they can take longer.
Yeah. Hey, in the meantime, Joe, that scotch is not going to drink itself, and I'm sure that a certain Mary Beth will want to see you about a rollover before we leave.
Okay,
if
good.
She's got to sign anything, do anything, whatever, anything.
Yeah, she does. But so what'll happen as we get closer? Is she settled with a prior employer yet?
She's pretty much so, yeah.
Okay. So what we need to do is put it on the calendar, right, when she's back in town?
Yeah, and we can wait until later in, just putting it out there.
A couple weeks, you're saying, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
What I'll do is this. I will write it down on my forehead to call you off the air, and when you'll tell me what day, even if we do it on a weekend. Cause,
what? Oh, put it on the back of your hand. You never wash your hands anyway.
That's
so
right, true.
Heck?
I forgot about that part, right?
Right.
But I do wash the one hand, though. All right. All right, my man. Any other good news?
Well, yeah, I just had to kick the appraiser out, but Vic's doing an excellent job,
Of course.
as she normally does.
Vic is Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, by the way. I got this new young lady sitting here, Bulldog. But I want you to know, first of all, that I never hire good-looking people. But I made an exception this time.
Oh, well, wait. I'm going to call Vic right after I get off the phone and say that.
Yeah, right. That'll work.
Oh, you are in big trouble, Joe.
So this is Kaylee Brown. She moved from California, and she's here, and she's now going to become the new assistant protege. And one of these days, when I'm
of which branch of
me personally.
Of you?
Yeah, she's going to run my life because I'm used to women running my life. I just haven't woman telling me what to do lately, so I feel bad.
Well, welcome, Kaylee, and hopefully I might get to, talk to you at some point in time.
Yes, definitely.
All right, my man. Listen, I'll talk to Mary Beth. You talk, and we will communicate, and I'll put you on the calendar, and we'll call you in a week or two, and don't get rid of that scotch.
Hey, not a chance, man.
All right, my man.
Yeah, and just expect frequent calls and updates.
That's exactly what I expect.
You got it.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks.
340-1590, 340-1590. Here was a system where our group really came in handy. Realtor, buy and sell.
Mm-hmm.
Mortgage, take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, attorney, will, trust, Dan, insurance, Joe Martek, money. Now, I'm the only one that hasn't gotten any money yet, but you heard him say, you know, Mary Beth left the employer, so we're rolling over a 401k, which is another subject. You've heard of 401ks. We did that education yesterday,
Yes,
remember?
we did.
So what happened is she's leaving an employer, and an employer has what's called a 401k, which is a retirement account, and money is put in there by the employer, usually, and by the employee, usually.
Well, definitely by the employee.
Definitely by the employee. So that
sometimes
money is
by
put
the
into
employer.
this account, and no tax has been paid on it. So the employer, they get a tax deduction for it, and which makes them happy. And it also is looking good for the employee because we call it golden handcuffs. If the employer can put money in this account but you can't have it yet, sometimes you stick around a little longer, and that's the concept of that. So when you leave an employer, they control that account. You now normally have the right to roll it out of there and put it into your own account, which is now called an individual retirement account, IRA. So Mary Beth left an employer which is a profit-making company, and she's moving to a non-profit-making company. Now, when you work for a non-profit company, they have a retirement plan, same thing, only it's not called a 401k, it's called a 403b. Do we know why? No.
Just because.
Just because. So anyway, when we met, they told her she could roll it into that, which normally people don't, because almost always the employer programs are limited to the types of investments you can get. It's not always in your best interest. When you work there and they match, it's always in your best interest to match, because if you put in $1 and they put in $1, it's called 100% on your money immediately, so that's the smartest thing to do. But once you leave, now that your money's sitting over here under the control or umbrella of that company, most people roll it out. It seems like I had a producer one time that took her a while to roll
I don't know
her.
where they rolled it to. It was just gone. Big broadcast company.
But the key is that over a period of time, the rules have gotten more protective of the consumer, thank goodness, because there was some transgressions committed
I'm sure.
over a period of time. You know, like when Enron went bust, a lot of people had most of their money involved in Enron stock.
Do you remember Capstar?
Yeah.
That would be them.
That would be them.
That would be them.
The key is this, that there have been problems, there have been abuses, and a lot of people don't even realize what they're invested in when it comes to these accounts. In fact, I've got one young lady I'm meeting tomorrow who we've already done some business, but she had a retirement account she'd forgotten about.
Okay.
And it's $35,000.
Wow.
And that's hard to forget if I was me.
Yeah, me too.
So we're rolling it.
But I could just imagine how happy she is she remembered.
Yeah, well, now she's very happy. But I'll tell you what, it's going to take us 6 months from the day we started to get it finally done.
But now why is that? Why would something take that long?
Because it's the golden rule.
He with the gold makes the rules.
He with the gold makes the rules. So when you have these retirement accounts, quote, they have a charter, they have systems, they have all kinds of stuff. It doesn't fall under the normal rules of just you and me and the bank or you and me and the brokerage account. So I oftentimes tell clients, I said, hey, just understand it's the golden rule, and we just have to comply with the rule, and whatever they need to have done, we do. One of the things that happens, and I like this part, and this is an argument for never getting married. So you get this retirement account. Let's say it's $50,000, $100,000, I don't care what it is, and you leave their employer, and you want to go and take that money, and you want to roll it into something else. They said, okay, are you married? And you say yes. They said, okay, we need your spouse to agree to let you take that money. Say, wait a minute, it's my money, it's not my spouse's. Tough, because if you get divorced in the divorce decree, the judge might decide that half of that money is not yours, it's your spouse's. Isn't that exciting? So literally, very often these 401ks, 403bs, etc., have a clause in there that says, if the spouse doesn't agree, you can't have it. Now, what if you don't like your spouse? Which happens quite often. And the spouse doesn't like you. It happens even more often.
Yeah, how fast are you going to get your money?
The key is, now we have to be nice to the spouse for a while to get him to sign.
That's where the lawyer comes in.
Well, then what happens is if
Or do you get involved in that? Do you have to contact this spouse?
Oh,
or is it
yeah.
okay, that'd be you?
Oh yeah, I do that
Okay.
first to try to say, hey, look,
I'm a
you
nice
can- you
guy,
can
you're
kill
a
each
nice
other,
guy.
kill each other later, but in the long run, half of that money, do you need it if you get divorced? I mean, even though she's, and you don't anymore, let's do the right thing.
Yeah.
And if that still doesn't agree, now the attorney has to get
Mm-hmm,
involved, and now the attorney costs money.
Right.
So we can really suck up an awful lot of money when it comes to a dispute. So literally, part of my job is to help people make this.
Now, could they roll? Now, let's go. We're trying to get rid of this 401k
Right.
with this attachment of this
Right.
spouse. Can you roll it over into an IRA?
Yes, once I get the spouse to sign
Oh,
and agree.
still okay.
Spouse has to agree. Here, the key is, now let's make it even more exciting. So now you have a 401k or a retirement plan with a company, and it's been sitting there, and you left that company 10 years ago. And when you left that company 10, 15 years ago, you were married. And now you're not married anymore to that person. And you find that money. And you say, I want my money. They said, okay. Are you married? No. Were you married
At the time.
at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Did you get divorced? Yes. We need a copy of the divorce decree to see if that spouse is entitled to that money. I got divorced 25 years ago. I don't even know where the divorce decree is. Well, you can't have the money then. So what happens is that divorce decree is hanging around someplace. You might have to go back to the county where you filed it and back into the archives. I mean, this.
Now, if it's a retirement account that you forgot about, would it be? Now you go back to the divorce decree and you find out what? Do you find out how do you?
If that part of that money goes to my spouse.
Okay.
If there's no mention of that money going to my spouse, I roll it into my own account.
Okay.
But I gotta, first of all, make sure the spouse is not on that account, because it happens quite often that spouses are entitled to a portion of that retirement account.
Well, do you name a beneficiary when you open up a 401k?
You always name. Well, excuse me. Forget. I'm going to play attorney. Most of the time.
Sometimes.
Probably. What happens? You're supposed to, but every once in a while, the agent forgets to do these little things.
Okay.
Like naming a beneficiary. So let's just say now you die and you have that retirement account and you don't have a named beneficiary. Oh boy, court system, here we go. Now we need blood relatives to come out of the woodwork. Then there's a pecking order. I mean, none of this stuff is simple, but if you do it correctly the first time,
Yeah.
it is simple. So we, and repeatedly, religiously, I have seen these abuses go on and on and on. And Lord, please shoot me if I ever make one of these mistakes to the detriment of my client. But we always want to name a beneficiary and or what's called a transfer on death agreement. Some things beneficiaries qualify for, some things they don't. As an example, if it's a retirement account, it's a beneficiary. But if it's like a bank account, normally they call it a transfer on death agreement. In fact, I had one that would say pay on death. And the client said to me, that's what that means on my checkbook. I never knew what that meant. Well, the banks, very often, when you open the account, if they're doing it correctly, they will say, and you'd forget this that minute because they say, if you drop dead tomorrow, who gets the money? And you say, okay, my brother, what's his name? And you write it down, and you forget it the next day because it's not a big deal. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, you're gone. That's it. I think I told you I had an old lady that I took care of for 10 years. Well, I never finished my story with my brother, did I?
No.
Gee whiz. And Kaylee, you're not even keeping me in line.
You tell a lot of stories.
we got the phone call.
Did I already tell you the story?
Of your brother?
Yeah?
Not yet.
Okay. I got another phone call?
No. It was Bulldog's phone call that changed the subject.
Just double check, making sure you're paying attention.
I'm watching you.
So I'm 12 years old. We're living in what I call GI housing. There was row houses built all over America when the guys came back after the Second World War, and every house was the same on the block, 100 in a row. It was 3-bedroom, 1 bath upstairs and a basement. And what happened, most of the guys went and finished off the basement. They'd tile, they'd put in a bar, they'd make walls and stuff, make it. That was the living room. Because back in those days, you weren't allowed in the living room. As a kid, you could not go in the living room because
rec room.
You'd wreck that couch. The only person allowed on that couch was the priest, and he never comes by, so nobody's ever sitting on that couch. So we're down in the basement. My old man's standing behind the bar. I'm standing on this side of the bar, across from it. I'm 12. My brother's 5 years younger than me. He's 7. Now, the reason my dad is going to kill me, he caught me smoking. Now, that's against the rules. Dad smoked, Mom smoked, everybody in the neighborhood smoked, but I'm 12, you can't smoke. So my dad's describing how I'm going to die. He's going to dismember me first, then chop me into small pieces slowly, so I have a lot of pain to understand that I should not have smoked, because that's against the rules. So my brother's standing next to me, and he's scared to death to move for fear he'll get chopped up by osmosis. And my brother's name is Eric, but his nickname was Sass, as in sassy. He had this grin, he could get away with murder. Usually the younger one gets away with more than the older one to start with. So my dad looks at my brother and he goes, Sass, are you smoking too? My brother says, no, Dad, I quit last year, honest. Now, it's really hard to kill a kid when you're laughing. Mm-hmm. So I've always said my brother saved my life because my dad just said, get out of here. As he
changed the temperature of that room really fast.
My brother. But you know what happens is, and Cliff, you know this, if you have brothers, were you younger or older?
Older.
When you got stuck with a little brother, whatever you were doing wrong, they had to do it too, because if they ratted on you, they're ratting on themselves. So my brother, no matter...
Yeah, and your mom probably sent the little brother along to try to keep you out of trouble.
No, my mother sent him with me just to get rid of him because my brother was hyper. And I remember coming home one day from school and my mother sitting on the floor crying and my brother's petting her head. Mommy, I'll be better, I promise. But today he would have every D there was, ADD, ADHD, all the rest of that. Back then, all you had was hyper, because, he only had 2 speeds, too. He was running full tilt or asleep. But that was just the way it is. To this day, he's an old guy, still hyper. Mm-hmm. You just don't overcome that. 340-1590, 340-1590. I'm going to talk a little bit about money. Can you imagine talking about money on the radio? It's the weirdest subject. One of the things that happens, and I know we've got some very faithful listeners that understand the stock market and are heavily invested in a stock market. But by almost everybody's guesstimate today, the market is what's called full. Now, full means prices are high for these individual company stock. Now, it's not a uniform thing, but by nature, because we use a gauge called the price-to-earnings ratio, price to earnings. And when the price-to-earnings ratio is at a 10 number, that's considered a good number. When the price-to-earnings ratio is higher than that, it starts to get bad. When it's 20 to 30, it's called, boy, that thing is way overpriced. Now, there are some companies that are growth companies that are going straight up, like Facebook or Netflix, that can have a ratio that's very high, but everybody believes Amazon is going to just keep on cranking. Is it going to? Not necessarily, but everybody believes it, so they overpay for the stock, envisioning that it's going to keep going. And that's what happened to Microsoft. People made absolute fortunes because Bill Gates was a genius, Apple, different people are just geniuses and they can make these things happen. But not all things work under that. So when we look at the broad market, called the S&P 500, is 500 companies, when that ratio is around 20, by most estimates, that's a bit high. So what I tell most clients, I said, look, unless you're very young and you've got a lot of time, which, you know what, in Florida we don't have a lot of that. I think Kaylee's the only one that's young. Anyway, when you're not so young anymore, let's say you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, all of a sudden you get a little bit more conservative and you're afraid of losing the money rather than how much you're going to make on it. So I tell clients, look, can you sit still with 5 or 6% for a period of time? Now, if you're in the bank, you're making a big 1, maybe a half. 5 or 6 is 5 to 6 times what you're making in the bank. And under the programs that I've got for people, you can get a check every single month, interest paid every month, dividends paid every month. But they're 100% liquid. Everything I do is 100% liquid, meaning I can get into it today, I can get out of it tomorrow. Some things have a penalty. Some things charge no commission up front. But what happens is when I look at an individual person, normally I look at what they've been and how old they are, and we start counseling and say, hey, now maybe we want to take a portion and get into things that might pay a little more. Like one of the things that I really, really like that are very timely are what's called real estate investment trusts. Real estate. Well, pretty much now real estate's a pretty solid thing all over the United States because we're into a slow growth economy. We came out of a recession. The values of real estate are slowly going up. So mortgages, the real estate itself, to me are not what I consider a high risk, even though if
They were a few years back.
they were a monster risk. You could lose a ton of money because when all of a sudden the market turns and the values go down and foreclosure.
But you could almost feel that something bad was going to happen because of how high everything was going.
Period. Hey, you know, when I sold my house out in Sewell's Point just before Francis and Jean, I'm going to tell you, I couldn't believe anybody would pay that kind of money. You know,
that was a very, very, you had luck on your side there.
luck, holy mackerel.
Yeah.
I mean, more than luck.
Yeah.
So anyway, the key was when you look at these things, normally I say to people, look, let's get started. We can go into the 5 or 6. But then I got clients that call me up and say, Joe, marijuana stock. It's going to be the biggest thing going. I said, okay, what do you think? And I said, I don't think. It's up to you. It's your money. Well, I want to put some money into it. And I said, okay, but you're going to sign a document that says I didn't talk you into it because it's high risk. This is all your idea. I have nothing to do with it. And if you want to do it, fine. But that's okay. Now, maybe they're right. Maybe it's going to be another great big winner, but nobody knows for sure. But the real estate investment trust today, most of them are paying somewhere between a 10 and 15% dividend. Now, here comes an old person wanting income, like me, from their investments. Well, 10% is a little better than 5, and it's a whole lot better than 1. So sometimes they mix them up and say, let's take a portion and do that. But we also can put in what's called a stop that in case the value goes down, it'll automatically sell. We don't even have to pay attention. 340-1590, 340-1590. Pretty soon she'll start doing this right here. You watch her now.
Yeah, it's about time.
Or sometimes she says
like this.
He does like that. That's 2 hands.
Yes.
2 hands.
It's like wrap up, Joe.
Am I done?
You are.
Just to say goodbye?
Yeah.
Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.